My name is Noah Mercer. My wedding was a grand affair. Everyone who was anyone in the capital was there. The champagne tower was 18 tiers high. The wedding dress was haute couture, and the diamond on the ring was blinding. Everyone said that Stella Pierce must have saved the galaxy in her past life to be able to marry me. Halfway through the ceremony, she disappeared along with my best man, my best friend. An obscene recording played through the MC's microphone, echoing throughout the entire banquet hall. I became the biggest joke in the city. My father was so angry he almost had a stroke. My mother couldn't stop crying. Stella's parents rushed over, pointing at my nose and cursing me for ruining their daughter. Everyone was waiting to see me break down, to see me lose my mind, to see how I would handle this glaring betrayal. I didn't. I calmly took out my phone and sent 3 messages to my assistant. Then I raised my glass to all the guests below the stage and smiled. Ladies and gentlemen, today's wedding will have a last-minute change of theme. Let's call it How to Gracefully Send a Pair of Scumbags to Hell. The game was just beginning. Wedding or funeral? Groom, do you take Miss Stella Pierce to be your lawfully wedded wife, for better or for worse? The MC's voice was solemn, amplified by the sound system to every corner of the banquet hall. I stood on the stage looking at Stella before me. She wore a $1 million wedding dress. Her makeup was exquisite, and the excitement in her eyes was palpable. I held the ring in my hand, ready to say the words, "I do." The seats below were filled with my parents, her parents, business magnates, relatives, and friends. The cameras were focused on us, ready to capture this sacred moment. Everything was perfect as a meticulously choreographed play. Just then, a burst of static crackled from the MC's microphone, a harsh buzzing sound. Everyone frowned. The sound engineer was scrambling in the back. Then, a woman's voice came through. It was Stella's voice, but breathy and somewhat coquettish. Slow down. What if Noah finds out about us? The banquet hall fell silent in an instant. You could hear a pin drop. Everyone's gaze shifted from Stella in her wedding dress in front of me to Finn Montgomery, my best man, standing beside me. Finn's face turned as white as a sheet in an instant. The Stella before me began to tremble, the color draining from her face. The voice from the microphone continued. It was Finn's voice, laced with a triumphant laugh. Find out. He's just a fool who only knows how to work. Once we get the dowry and that villa from him, we'll run away together. You've always loved me, haven't you? But I'm scared. What are you afraid of, baby? After the wedding, he's giving that plot of land in the west of the city to your dad's company. Once the contract is signed, that Noah will be our personal ATM. Then you can just find some random excuse to fight with him. A man like him who cares so much about his pride will definitely. The voice cut off there, not stopped but replaced by an even more jarring burst of static. The sound engineer had finally cut the feed, but it was too late. What should have been heard and what shouldn't have been heard, the more than 1,000 guests present had heard it all, every single word. I looked at Stella in front of me. Her lips trembled, unable to form a single word. I turned my head to look at Finn beside me. He was the brother I grew up with, the vice president of my company, the best man at my wedding. He now had his head down, not daring to look at me, his fists clenched tightly. The air froze. Time seemed to freeze as well. Below the stage, my mother had already stood up, her face pale, pointing at the stage, too angry to speak. My father supported her, his face ashen, the fury in his eyes murderous. Stella's parents, on the other hand, wore expressions of shock and bewilderment, followed by unconcealed panic. All eyes were on me. They were waiting for me to explode in anger, to flip the tables, to rush up and punch Finn and slap Stella, waiting for me, the biggest cuckold in the city, to stage a hysterical melodrama. I disappointed them. I very calmly put the ring I was about to place on her finger back in my pocket. Then I took my phone out from the inner pocket of my suit. In front of everyone, I unlocked it and found my assistant's number. I sent 3 messages. The first, initiate Plan B, freeze all projects related to the Pierce and Montgomery families immediately. Prepare for liquidation. The second, send this recording, along with everything else I gave you before, to all the media present. The headline will be, $1 billion Wedding Shocker, Bride and Best Man's Live Show. The third, notify the legal department. In half an hour, I want to see the divorce agreement and all the documents for suing Finn Montgomery for commercial fraud. After sending the messages, I put away my phone, looked up, and faced the guests below the stage again. They were all looking at me as if I were a monster. I walked over to the MC and took the microphone from his stiff hand. I tested the sound. Hello. The sound carried clearly through the speakers. I scanned the entire hall, my gaze finally landing on the table where Stella's parents were seated. They were looking at me in terror. I smiled, the gentlest smile. Dear guests, friends, my sincerest apologies. Today's wedding has encountered a small mishap. But it's all right. Please enjoy the banquet and accept the red envelopes. Just consider it a good show that I, Noah Mercer, have invited the entire city to watch. My gaze swept over Stella and Finn's faces. They trembled even more violently. Oh, by the way, to liven things up, I've decided on the spot to give today's wedding a new theme. I paused, looking at the countless glowing phone screens in the audience, and said clearly, word by word. Let's call it How to Gracefully Send a Pair of Scum to Their Graves Together. The first course. As my words fell, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. Then came the sound of sharp intakes of breath and suppressed murmurs. The flashes from the media section flickered like crazy, aimed at me and at Stella and Finn, who were trembling like leaves in the wind. On my parents' side, my mother had already composed herself. She looked at me, the panic in her eyes replaced by a sense of understanding and reassurance. My father had simply sat down, picked up the teacup on the table, and took a sip. They knew me. The son of the Mercer family never fights a battle unprepared. Stella's mother, Margaret Pierce, was the first to react. She shot up from her seat like a crazed lioness and rushed towards the stage. Her husband, Richard Pierce, followed behind her, his face a mask of panic and confusion. Noah Mercer, you beast. What nonsense are you spouting? Margaret ran to the edge of the stage, pointing at me, her voice shrill and piercing. It was you. You must have forged the recording. You want to ruin my daughter. If you don't want to marry her, just say so. Why resort to such despicable means? She started to cause a scene. This was her forte. Whenever Stella threw a tantrum at me in the past, she would use this trick to force me to give in. It worked every time. Unfortunately, not today. I ignored her and simply spoke into the microphone. Security. At the entrance of the banquet hall, 8 members of my company's security team immediately entered, dressed in suits, wearing earpieces, their faces expressionless like a wall. Please escort these 2 out. My tone was flat. Who dares? Margaret stood with her hands on her hips. I'm the bride's mother. I am your mother-in-law. You dare touch me? The security guards looked at me, waiting for my command. I said nothing, just made a gesture. 2 security guards immediately stepped forward, one on each side, and grabbed Margaret's arms. Margaret began to scream, struggle, and curse foully. Noah Mercer, you bastard. May you die a horrible death. How has our Stella ever wronged you? You're a pervert. Richard tried to step in and help, but was stopped by 2 other security guards. He could only shout anxiously. Let's talk this out, Noah. There must be a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. I looked at him and found it somewhat amusing. Just yesterday, he had called me to hint that the development project for the piece of land in the west of the city should be initiated. He said it would be Stella's final dowry. What a considerate father-in-law. I spoke into the microphone, my voice not loud, but clear enough for everyone to hear. Uncle Richard, last month you took $3 million from me in Stella's name, claiming it was for your company's cash flow. Richard's face froze. 2 months ago, Aunt Margaret took a liking to a set of jewelry costing $800,000. It was also Stella who asked, and I paid for it. Margaret's shouting stopped. In the past 3 years, the money, the houses, and the cars that your family has taken from me, directly or indirectly, add up to a total of $37,620,000. I looked at them and said, word by word. I have the transfer records for every single transaction. Now you're telling me it's a misunderstanding. Cold sweat trickled down Richard's face. Margaret didn't dare to cause a scene anymore. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pure terror. I waved my hand at the security guards. Please escort them out. If they resist, treat them as troublemakers at a wedding and call the police directly. The security guards were no longer polite, half carrying and half dragging them out. Margaret tried to shout something else, but the security guards skillfully pressed a soft spot on her waist, and she instantly lost all her strength, only able to whimper. After dealing with those two, I finally turned my attention back to the two protagonists on the stage. Stella, my fiancée, right now her makeup was ruined by tears and her white wedding dress was stained with them. She looked at me, her eyes filled with pleading. Noah, listen to my explanation. It's not like that. It was Finn who seduced me. He forced me. Oh, starting to shift the blame so quickly. Truly my good Stella. Hearing this, Finn looked up abruptly, staring at Stella in disbelief. Stella, what are you saying? It was clearly you. Shut up. Stella screamed, interrupting him. It's all your fault. You ruined me. She became hysterical, reaching out to slap and tear at Finn. Finn dodged while trying to grab her hands. On the stage, the two of them, with a torn wedding dress and a disheveled suit, looked like two defeated fighting cocks. The guests below watched with great interest. Their phones were recording even more enthusiastically. This was far more interesting than a cookie-cutter wedding. I watched this farce, feeling bored. I raised my hand and tapped the microphone lightly. All right, the first course, the appetizer, is over. Now, let's serve the second. I looked at Finn. Finn, I'll give you a chance. Finn stopped moving, looking at me with surprise and uncertainty. Right now, in front of everyone, tell us clearly about you and Stella. From when it started to everything you've done, every single detail, and I will consider letting your family's company die a more dignified death. Finn's breathing stopped all at once. He looked at me, his eyes bloodshot with fear and struggle. His family's company primarily dealt in building materials, and my family's Mercer Corporation was their biggest client, bar none. With a single word, I could make his family's company go into bankruptcy and liquidation within 3 days. He knew I wasn't joking. Stella was also stunned. She stopped her assault, looking at me in disbelief, and then turned to Finn. Her eyes were filled with warning and threat. She was betting that Finn's true love for her could overcome his fear of reality. Unfortunately, she overestimated love and underestimated human nature. Finn's lips trembled for a long time. He glanced at his parents' table below. His father's face was already ashen. He looked at Stella again, his eyes now filled with nothing but resentment. He snatched the microphone from the best man next to him, his voice hoarse. I'll talk. I'll talk. Stella tried to rush forward and cover his mouth, but with a look from me, the security guards at the side immediately stopped her. It was half a year ago, Finn began to speak, his voice not loud, but the entire hall was silent and everyone could hear him. Half a year ago, Stella came to me and said she couldn't stand you anymore. She said you only knew how to work, spent too little time with her, and gave her only money, no affection. I listened with a blank expression. I had been hearing this excuse for 3 years. She said the one she had always loved was me, and she only chose you back then because my family wasn't well off. The more Finn spoke, the smoother it became, as if he were brainwashing himself. We got together. She said that after you two got married and she got the assets you gave her, she would divorce you. And then we. That's enough, I cut him off. Any more would be disgusting. I looked at him. So, you were planning to sleep with my woman, spend my money, and try to hollow out my family's projects all at the same time. Is that right? Finn hung his head, not daring to speak. A tacit admission. Very good. I nodded, then looked toward the media section below the stage. Friends from the press, did you all record that? The reporters nodded their heads vigorously with excitement. Tomorrow's front page headline, no, the headlines for the next month were secured. I took the microphone back. Stella Pierce. Finn Montgomery. I called out their names. They both flinched. You always said that what you two have is true love, and what you have with me is business. Today, I'm going to settle this business with you. My gaze shifted to the entrance of the banquet hall. My assistant, Wesley Hart, walked in with two people in lawyer uniforms. They were holding thick stacks of documents. Wesley walked to the stage and handed the files to me. I opened the first one. Miss Stella Pierce, this is the prenuptial agreement. The agreement stipulates that if, during the course of the marriage, one party commits a serious fault such as infidelity, the other party has the right to reclaim all gifted assets and demand compensation for emotional distress. The wedding dress you are wearing costs $1,300,000. The tiara on your head, $5,200,000. The watch on your wrist, $760,000. With every sentence I spoke, Stella's face turned a shade paler. Also, the villa under your name, 3 supplementary cards with no credit limit, and everything I've given you over the past 3 years, for a total value of $120 million. According to the agreement, you can't take any of these things with you. Furthermore, my lawyer will be filing a claim against you for emotional distress due to your fraudulent behavior. The amount is tentatively set at $1 billion. I closed the file and looked at her deathly pale face. I don't want to use my money to measure the insult I've suffered, because you're not worthy. Then I picked up the second document. Mr. Finn Montgomery. Finn's body was already starting to sway. As the vice president of the Mercer Corporation, you used your position to leak corporate trade secrets, colluded with competitors, and intended to harm the company's interests. The evidence is right here. I tapped the file in my hand. Illegal profits of over $30 million. The potential losses caused to the company exceed $500 million. What awaits you are charges of commercial fraud and embezzlement. My legal team suggests a prison sentence of approximately 15 to 20 years. Finn's legs gave out, and he collapsed onto the floor. He was finished. His life was over. Oh, right, your family's company, I added, as if I had just remembered something. From this second forward, the Mercer Corporation and all enterprises that have a cooperative relationship with us will completely terminate any and all cooperation with Montgomery Building Materials. At the same time, we will work with the banks to conduct an asset review of their company. I guarantee that within 3 days, your family will receive a bankruptcy summons from the court. I threw the documents on the floor, the papers scattering everywhere like a mess of chicken feathers. Stella looked at me, the plea in her eyes gone, replaced by only despair and resentment. Noah Mercer, you are so cruel. I laughed. Cruel. When the two of you were tumbling in my bed, plotting how to drain me of my assets, why didn't you say that was cruel? When you took my money to buy your so-called love nest, why didn't you say that was cruel? Stella, Finn, you remember this. What is mine, Noah Mercer's, is only yours if I give it to you. If I don't give it, you cannot take it by force. If you do, you will pay the price. I turned around, no longer looking at them. Wesley, I'll leave the rest to you. Yes, President Mercer. Wesley waved his hand, and the lawyers and security guards immediately moved forward, restraining the limp Finn and the distraught Stella. Their wedding was over, and my funeral had just begun. I stepped off the stage and walked straight to my parents' table. My mother took my hand, her eyes still red. Noah, you've been wronged. I shook my head. Mom, I haven't been wronged. Cutting my losses in time is a good thing. My dad patted my shoulder. He said nothing, but his eyes showed his support. I raised my glass. Dad, Mom, all my uncles, I made a spectacle of myself today. I'll punish myself with 3 drinks. I downed 3 glasses in a row. The liquor was strong, but my mind was exceptionally clear. I knew this wasn't over. The Pierce family, the Montgomery family, they wouldn't give up so easily. They would retaliate, using every means possible to take a bite out of me. But it didn't matter. A game is more interesting when it's played slowly. The farce in the banquet hall was brought to an orderly conclusion under Wesley's arrangement. Stella and Finn were dragged away like 2 dead dogs. The guests tactfully began to eat, but the topic of everyone's conversation remained on the shocking scene that had just unfolded. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing from the moment I stepped off the stage. WeChat, text messages, all were unread. Some were comforting, some were gossiping, and some were gloating over my misfortune. I didn't look at any of them and put my phone on silent. I accompanied my parents and a few elders from family friends to finish this soured wedding banquet. During the meal, everyone had a tacit understanding not to mention those two people's names again. It was as if they were just two pieces of dirt that had accidentally fallen on the floor during this grand feast, to be simply swept away. After the banquet ended, I saw the guests off. An uncle who did business with my family patted my shoulder before leaving. "Noah, you did the right thing. You can't be soft-hearted when dealing with these ungrateful wolves." Another uncle, an old friend of my father's, was even more direct. "That Montgomery family kid, I knew something was off about him for a long time. Now that you're crushing his family, our companies will fully cooperate. When a wall is about to collapse, everyone gives it a push. When a drum is broken, 10,000 people will beat it. This is reality." After seeing everyone off, I returned to the break room. Wesley was already waiting for me. "President Mercer, it's all been handled." He handed over a tablet. "The media has already published all the articles. Right now, 8 of the top 10 trending topics are about us." I clicked on it to take a look. Mercer Corporation wedding scandal, recording of the bride and best man, Noah Mercer's Plan B, the fastest divorce in history. The hype exploded. I, Noah Mercer, had become a national celebrity in the most undignified way possible. "What about the Pierce and Montgomery families?" I asked. Finn was taken directly to the Economic Investigation Department. The legal team has already submitted all the evidence. His parents wanted to come and plead, but I stopped them. Stella was taken back by her parents. However, they haven't gone far. They're in the coffee shop downstairs at the hotel, saying they must see you. Wesley's tone was very calm. "Also, President Mercer, the matter you asked me to investigate has results." He flipped the tablet to another page. It was an investigation report about Stella and Finn, the hotel record from the first time they spent the night together 6 months ago, the purchase contract for the apartment they bought in the suburbs with my money with both of their names on the property deed, and also photos of Finn meeting with a high-level executive from our company's competitor, Sterling Group, and one by one, the leaked internal bidding prices and client information of the Mercer Corporation. I looked at these things, my gaze growing colder and colder. I thought they were just greedy and stupid. I never expected them to be malicious as well. They wanted to utterly destroy me and the Mercer family. "What's the word from Sterling?" I asked. "Chairman Bennett called your father half an hour ago, saying it was a misunderstanding and that he would deal with his subordinates sternly." "Of course that's what he'd say," I sneered. "Opportunists trimming their sails to the wind is their instinct. Trying to absolve himself of all blame. Too late. Tell Chairman Bennett that I want to see him in my office at 9 tomorrow morning. If he doesn't show up, then the Mercer Corporation will officially declare war on Sterling." "Yes, President Mercer." I stood up and straightened my suit. Although the wedding was ruined, my dignity could not be lost. "Let's go. Time to meet my former father-in-law and mother-in-law." In the coffee shop. In a coffee shop downstairs at the hotel, Richard and Margaret sat in a corner, looking haggard and restless. Seeing me enter, they immediately stood up. Margaret tried to rush over, but was held back tightly by Richard. I walked over to them and sat down opposite. Wesley stood behind me. "Noah," Richard spoke first, his voice hoarse. "Stella, she was momentarily foolish. She was deceived by that bastard Finn. Give her another chance. We will return all the money to you." "Return it." I looked at him. 37,620,000. Can you come up with that right now? The house you live in. The cars you drive. Which of these wasn't bought with my money? Uncle Richard, your half-dead company would have gone bankrupt last year if I hadn't invested in it. What will you use to pay me back? Richard couldn't say a word. Margaret grew anxious and shook off Richard's hand. "Noah, don't you push us too far. Our Stella is pregnant with your child." As soon as these words were out, even Wesley was stunned for a moment, but I wasn't surprised at all. A cornered dog will leap over a wall. They'd say anything in desperation. I looked at Margaret as if she were a buffoon. "Is that so? Then that's perfect. I just had a full physical examination last month, and one of the tests was for sperm viability. The report shows that due to long-term fatigue and an irregular schedule, my sperm viability is 0. To put it simply, I am currently infertile. I leaned forward slightly, staring into Margaret's eyes. Aunt Margaret, you tell me now. Whose child is in Stella's belly? Margaret's face turned completely white in an instant. No, impossible. You're lying, Margaret shrieked, her voice changing pitch with fear. You're lying. Medical reports can be faked. Can they? I took a recording pen from my pocket, placed it on the table, and pressed the play button. What came out was a conversation between Stella and her best friend. The time was 2 weeks ago. Stella, are you really going to do this? What if Noah finds out? Find out what? He's so busy he barely has time to breathe. I can count the number of times he's touched me. How would he know this child isn't his? But Finn, what can he give you? Once I get Noah's money, I'll just kick him to the curb. Men, aren't they all the same? The recording was crystal clear. Cold sweat trickled down the backs of Richard and Margaret as they listened. This was the daughter they had cherished in the palm of their hands, their pride and joy. Her mind was actually this venomous. I turned off the recording pen. This recording, along with the medical report I just mentioned, will be submitted to the court by my lawyer. Adultery in marriage, malicious fraud, and transfer of assets. Tell me, how do you think the judge will rule? I looked at the two of them and said slowly. Oh, right. One more thing. Uncle Richard, the $5 million subsidy your company applied for 2 years ago for the municipal greening project seems to have some accounting issues. As far as I know, you used a lot of fake invoices to inflate the costs. The actual investment was less than $20 million. Wouldn't that be considered defrauding the state of subsidies? Tell me, what do you think will happen if I hand over the chain of evidence to the tax bureau and the disciplinary committee? With a thud, Richard collapsed into his chair. He looked at me as if he had seen a ghost. His biggest secret, which he thought was seamless, how could I know? How could I know? From the day I decided to marry Stella, I had investigated her family from top to bottom. I knew exactly what kind of person she was and what kind of people her parents were. I originally thought I could change her. I gave her 3 years. In the end, I was overthinking it. It's easier to change the course of a river than to change a person's nature. Since I couldn't change it, then I'd destroy it. Uproot it completely, leaving no future trouble. Noah, no, President Mercer, young Master Mercer, Richard slumped over the table, practically begging. Please let us live. It's our fault. We're worse than pigs and dogs. We'll give you back all the money. We'll kowtow to you. He was actually about to kneel. I leaned back, avoiding him. It's too late, I said. From the moment Stella and Finn decided to betray me, your entire family was already sentenced to death in my eyes. I gave you a chance, but you didn't take it. I stood up. Wesley, see them out. Have the company's legal department follow up on the rest. I don't want to hear any more news about this family. Understood, President Mercer. I turned and left without a backward glance. Behind me came Margaret's desperate wails and Richard's feeble pleas. To me, these sounds were more beautiful than any music. Back in the car, I closed my eyes and leaned back against the seat. The high tension that had lasted all day finally eased a little. A wave of fatigue washed over me. Wesley looked at me in the rearview mirror and asked cautiously. President Mercer, are we going back to the old residence now? The chairman and madam should still be waiting for you. No, I opened my eyes. Go to the company. There's still a tough battle to fight. The trade secrets leaked by Finn were the real major threat. The Sterling Group had our trump card and would definitely make a move. I had to be fully prepared before they launched their attack. As for Stella and Finn, they were already dead to me. The dead weren't worth any more of my energy. The car drove smoothly into the night. Outside the window were the myriad lights of the city. I looked at those lights and suddenly felt a little ironic. The wedding house I had prepared for Stella was not far away. The lights there would not be on tonight. That's fine, too. Out with the old, in with the new. This failed marriage was like a failed investment. Cut my losses and get out in time. Although the process was ugly, the result was ultimately good. At least it made me see many people and many things clearly. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Wesley. President Mercer, Finn's father, Gregory Montgomery, is waiting for you at the company entrance. He says he has something important to tell you in person. Gregory Montgomery. What was he here for? To plead or to threaten? Interesting. It seemed the third course of the evening had served itself up. Have him wait for me in the top-floor conference room, I replied. I'd like to see what other tricks he could pull. Mercer Corporation headquarters, top-floor conference room. The lights were brightly lit. When I arrived, Gregory was already there. He looked at least 10 years older than he had at the wedding during the day. His temples were gray, his face full of fatigue and anxiety, and the expensive suit he was wearing looked wrinkled. He stood up immediately when he saw me enter. Noah, he began, his voice tinged with a fawning tone. He used to be on brotherly terms with my father. I'd always called him Uncle Gregory. Today, I didn't let him finish. Director Montgomery, I walked to the head of the table and sat down, my tone distant and polite. What brings you here so late at night? Wesley poured me a glass of water and then stood quietly behind me. My form of address was like a needle pricking Gregory. His face turned pale. Noah, I know it's that rebellious son of mine, Finn, who has wronged you. Even if you beat him to death for the outrageous thing he's done, I wouldn't say a word. But the company is innocent. The hundreds of employees at Montgomery Corporation are also innocent. He started to play the sympathy card. Chairman Montgomery, the business world isn't the underworld. We don't have that rule about not harming families. I lifted my teacup and blew on the steam. But the business world has its own rules. Finn is your son and also the heir to your company. He used his position as vice president of Mercer Corporation to steal our secrets and sell them to our competitors. Wasn't it all for the benefit of your Montgomery building materials? Do you dare say that you, the chairman, knew nothing when he leaked our Mercer Corporation's bid price to Sterling Group? Gregory's lips moved, but he couldn't speak. Knew. Of course he knew. In fact, many of Finn's actions were carried out with his tacit approval or even at his instruction. The father and son duo had long wanted to break free from their reliance on the Mercer Corporation and even wanted to turn around and bite the hand that fed them, to replace them. They just didn't expect retribution to come so quickly and so ruthlessly. Noah, for the sake of the many years of friendship between our two families. Friendship? I interrupted him and laughed. Chairman Montgomery, when your son was rolling around in bed with my fiancée, why didn't you think about friendship? When you two, father and son, treated me like a fool and schemed against my family's business, why didn't you think about friendship? Now that your empire is about to crumble, you come running to me to talk about friendship. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was like a hammer pounding on Gregory's heart. If you do something wrong, you have to admit it. When you take a beating, you have to stand straight. This is the principle my father taught me since I was a child. I believe Uncle Gregory must also understand. Gregory's body swayed, and he had to hold onto the conference table to keep from falling. He knew that pleading was useless. A hint of desperation flashed in his eyes. Noah Mercer, are you really going to be so ruthless? His tone changed, laced with a threat. Even a cornered rabbit will bite. Forcing us into a dead end won't do you any good either. Don't forget, our two families have cooperated for 20 years. I have all the inside information and accounts for many projects. If we're really going to perish together, don't think your Mercer Corporation will get away clean. The dagger was drawn. This was his true purpose for coming tonight, to threaten me into submission with mutual destruction. What a pity. He miscalculated. I looked at him and suddenly felt a little sorry for him. Chairman Montgomery, why do you think my father could entrust the Mercer Corporation to me with peace of mind? It's not because I'm his son. It's because I'm more ruthless and cleaner than he is. I took a folder from Wesley and threw it in front of him. All that so-called inside information you mentioned, I had already cleaned it all up in my first year of taking over the company. All the problematic accounts have been settled. All the risky collaborations have been terminated, including the ones with your Montgomery building materials. Starting from 3 years ago, every transaction and every contract between our Mercer Corporation and your company has been clean and can withstand any scrutiny. The things you have in your hands are all old news. Even if you expose them, it will only tarnish my father's reputation a little. It won't shake the foundation of the Mercer Corporation. But you, I stood up, walked over to him, and looked down at him. You and your son used my trust to steal business secrets. This is a fact that is happening right now. Do you think your outdated dirt has more power, or does the evidence I have in my hands, which can send you to prison immediately, have more power? Gregory completely broke down. His last trump card, which he was so proud of, was worthless in my eyes. All his schemes were within my expectations. He was like a clumsy chess player whose opponent saw the endgame after his first move. This sense of powerlessness was enough to destroy a person's entire will. I. He pointed at me, his finger trembling, unable to utter a single word. Finally, his eyes rolled back, and he fell backwards stiffly. Wesley was quick and stepped forward to catch him, checking his breathing. President Mercer, he fainted from a fit of rage. Call an ambulance, I said faintly. Give him a dignified exit. Looking at Gregory being carried away on a stretcher, I felt nothing. Pathetic people must have their own despicable aspects. He was my father's friend, but he forgot that in the business world, there are no eternal friends, only eternal interests. He raised a son like Finn, so he had to bear the corresponding consequences. The father pays for the son's debts. And the son's debts, the father must also pay. Wesley. Yes, President Mercer. Notify everyone. There will be a high-level group meeting tomorrow at 9 in the morning. The agenda, to completely annihilate the Sterling Group. I want Marcus Bennett to know that what he took from me, he will not only have to spit back out, but he'll have to throw himself into the bargain. Yes. I walked out of the conference room and stood before the floor-to-ceiling window on the top floor. Below me lay the splendid night view of the capital city. I had thought that destroying Stella and Finn would bring me great satisfaction, but it didn't. I only felt it was uninteresting, like crushing 2 ants, not even leaving a trace on the sole of my shoe. What truly piqued my interest was the hunt to come. Sterling Group, Marcus Bennett. This old fox was an opponent worthy of my serious attention. The game was only now getting to the main event. For the next week, I practically lived at the company. The massive war machine that was the Mercer Group, under my command, went into full operation. The target, Sterling Group. We deployed all our resources, capital, legal, media, connections. Like a meticulously woven net, we closed in on the Sterling Group from all directions. Sterling Group's stock price began to plummet. Several of their major ongoing projects were forced to halt as their funding chains broke due to our interception. Banks began to call on their loans. Partners, one after another, terminated their contracts and severed ties. The Tax Bureau and the Securities Regulatory Commission also received anonymous reports we submitted about their tax evasion and illegal operations and dispatched investigation teams. Marcus Bennett, the chairman known for his cunning in the business world, was in a complete panic. He tried to plead with my father, only to be rebuffed with, "Noah Mercer is in charge of the company now." He wanted to meet with me, but I had Wesley tell him that if he wanted to see me, he should come to my office with 50% of Sterling Group's shares. He roared in anger over the phone, saying I was going too far. Going too far? When he and his people colluded with Finn to steal my business secrets, why didn't he say that was going too far? In a world of adults, when you make a mistake, you have to accept the penalty. This war lasted for half a month. After half a month, Sterling Group's market value had evaporated by 70%, and it was on the verge of bankruptcy. Marcus Bennett's hair turned white overnight. He walked into my office with a share transfer agreement. The Mercer Group acquired all of Sterling Group's quality assets at an extremely low price. After this battle, Mercer Group's leading position in the industry became even more unshakable, and my name, Noah Mercer, for the first time made its mark throughout the entire business world. No one ever saw me as just a rich heir who relied on his family anymore. They called me Madman Mercer. After dealing with the company's affairs, I took a rare half-day off for myself. That afternoon, I drove around the city aimlessly. Before I knew it, I had driven to the suburbs. I passed a newly built residential complex. I suddenly remembered that the so-called love nest Finn and Stella had bought seemed to be around here. I had Wesley check the apartment, because their assets had been frozen, had already entered the foreclosure auction process. The starting bid was less than half the market price. On a whim, I drove the car in. The community environment was quite nice. I found the building, the unit. Just as I was about to leave, I saw a familiar figure walking out of the building entrance. It was Stella. She was much thinner, much more haggard. She was wearing a gray cleaner uniform, carrying a bucket and a mop, her hair tied up messily. There was no trace of the glamorous and radiant campus belle of the past. She saw my car, that custom edition Bentley, the only one in the entire capital. She also saw me. She froze on the spot, and the bucket in her hand fell to the ground with a clang. Water and grime splashed all over her feet. She stood there staring at me intently. In her eyes, there was shock, embarrassment, humiliation, and even more, a towering hatred. I rolled down the car window and looked at her. "New job?" I asked, my tone flat, as if greeting an old friend. Her lips trembled, unable to utter a single word. Right. What else could she say? Her family was bankrupt. Richard was sentenced to 10 years for fraud. Margaret couldn't handle the shock, had a mental breakdown, and was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. She herself was burdened with enormous debt, her reputation in tatters, and no company dared to hire her. To be able to find a cleaning job to support herself was already considered lucky. "That's good," I nodded. "Supporting yourself through your own labor is worthy of respect." With that, I rolled up the window, preparing to leave. "Noah Mercer." She suddenly rushed over, pounding on my car window and screaming. "Are you satisfied now? You've ruined everything for me. You must be so proud of yourself now." I looked at her crazed expression and shook my head. I had Wesley hand her a check. "This is $1 million. It's enough for you to pay off a portion of your debts and enough for you to move to another city and start over. From now on, we are even." I thought she would take it. After all, she loved money so much. But she didn't. She looked at the check and suddenly she laughed, laughing until tears streamed down her face. She snatched the check and, right in front of me, tore it to shreds. The pieces of paper, like snowflakes, fluttered to the ground. "Noah Mercer, you think you can get rid of me like this?" She glared at me through the car window. "I'm telling you, in this life, I'm not done with you. If I'm not happy, you won't be either. I will haunt you like a nightmare for the rest of your life." I watched her quietly, waiting for her to finish. She panted heavily, her chest heaving, her face twisted with hatred. She looked like a madwoman. "Are you done?" I asked calmly. She was stunned. "If you're done, then let me tell you something." I rolled down the window a bit more so she could hear me clearly. "Stella, you're not worth it. You're not worth my anger, not worth my hatred, and certainly not worth haunting my dreams. Do you know what you are to me now? Nothing. You're not even a memory. You're just a lesson, a reminder of what happens when I trust the wrong person." I started the car engine. "Goodbye, Stella. I hope you find peace someday. But more than that, I hope I never see you again." I drove away without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I could see her standing there, alone in the fading light, surrounded by the torn pieces of the check. She looked small. Insignificant. Already forgotten. Life moved on, as it always does. The scandal that rocked the city became old news, replaced by newer, fresher gossip. The Mercer Corporation continued to thrive under my leadership. The acquisition of Sterling Group's assets had positioned us as the undisputed leader in the industry. Finn Montgomery was sentenced to 18 years in prison for commercial fraud and embezzlement. I heard through the grapevine that he was a model prisoner, keeping his head down, trying to reduce his sentence through good behavior. His father, Gregory, never recovered from the shame and the stress. He suffered a massive stroke 3 months after that night in my conference room and was now confined to a wheelchair, unable to speak. As for Stella, I kept tabs on her, not out of any lingering affection, but purely as a precaution. She had moved to another city, a smaller one, where no one knew her story. She was working 2 jobs, one as a waitress during the day and another as a night shift clerk at a convenience store. The debt was crushing her, but she was surviving. Barely. Richard Pierce died in prison. A heart attack, they said. Quick and relatively painless. Margaret was still in the psychiatric hospital, lost in her own world, no longer recognizing anyone, not even her own daughter. I felt nothing when I heard these updates. No satisfaction, no regret. Just emptiness. They had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. That's how the world works. My parents had been trying to set me up on blind dates, worried that the scandal had left me scarred and unwilling to trust again. They were partially right. I was more cautious now, more guarded. But I wasn't broken. If anything, I was stronger, sharper, more focused. One evening, I was attending a charity gala. It was one of those events where the city's elite gathered to pretend they cared about the less fortunate while really just networking and showing off their wealth. I was there representing the Mercer Corporation, making appearances, shaking hands, smiling for the cameras. That's when I saw her. She was standing by the bar, wearing a simple but elegant navy blue dress. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun, and she wasn't wearing much jewelry, just a pair of simple pearl earrings. She looked out of place among the glittering peacocks that filled the room. She looked real. Our eyes met across the room, and for a moment, everything else faded away. She smiled, a small, genuine smile, and raised her glass slightly in acknowledgement. I found myself walking toward her without even thinking about it. "Hi," I said when I reached her. "I'm Noah." "I know who you are," she replied, her voice warm and slightly amused. "Everyone here knows who you are, Mr. Mercer." "I'm Hazel." "Hazel Chen. Are you here with someone?" I asked, suddenly feeling like a teenager at his first dance. "No, I'm here representing my company. We're one of the charities benefiting from tonight's event. We run programs for underprivileged children, helping them get access to education and resources." We talked for hours that night. She was intelligent, passionate about her work, and refreshingly honest. She didn't fawn over me or my wealth. She didn't ask about the scandal, though I was sure she knew about it. She treated me like a person, not a trophy or a target. When the gala ended, I asked if I could see her again. She hesitated for just a moment, studying my face as if trying to read my intentions. Then she smiled and said yes. Hazel and I had been dating for almost a year. It was different from anything I had experienced with Stella. There were no games, no manipulation, no hidden agendas. Hazel was straightforward and kind. She challenged me when I was wrong and supported me when I needed it. She made me laugh. She made me feel human again. I had taken her to meet my parents months ago, and they had immediately fallen in love with her. My mother kept dropping hints about weddings and grandchildren, much to my embarrassment and Hazel's amusement. One evening, we were having dinner at my apartment. I had cooked, or rather, attempted to cook, and Hazel was politely trying not to laugh at my culinary disaster. "You know," she said, pushing the overcooked pasta around her plate, "there's a reason why successful businessmen usually have personal chefs." "Are you saying I'm a terrible cook?" I asked, feigning offense. "I'm saying you're many things, Noah Mercer. A brilliant businessman, a surprisingly decent human being once you let your guard down, and yes, a terrible cook." I laughed. It felt good to laugh, to be myself without pretense. "Hazel," I said, suddenly serious. "There's something I need to tell you." She put down her fork, her expression growing concerned. "What is it?" "I know I haven't been completely open about what happened with Stella and Finn. I know you know the basics from the media coverage, but there's more to it. The betrayal, the manipulation, the way they tried to destroy me and my family, it changed me. It made me hard, suspicious, unwilling to trust." I reached across the table and took her hand. "But you've changed me too. You've shown me that not everyone has an ulterior motive, that some people are just genuinely good. You've made me believe in love again, Hazel. And I need you to know that." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Noah. I'm not asking you to marry me," I said quickly. "Not yet. I know we both need more time. But I wanted you to know that when I do ask, whenever that day comes, it will be because I can't imagine my life without you. Not because of what you can give me or what your family connections are or any of that nonsense. Just you. Hazel Chen. The woman who refuses to let me wallow in self-pity and who makes terrible jokes about my cooking." She was crying now, but smiling too. That was the worst almost proposal I've ever heard. Give me time, I said. I'll make the real one better. She laughed through her tears and squeezed my hand. I'm holding you to that, Mr. Mercer. It's been 2 years since that disastrous wedding day. 2 years since I stood on that stage and watched my carefully constructed world crumble around me. 2 years since I learned that the person I thought I loved was nothing more than a skilled actress playing a role. But it's also been 2 years of growth, of learning, of becoming a better version of myself. The Mercer Corporation is stronger than ever. My relationship with my parents has deepened. And I have Hazel, who challenges me and supports me in equal measure. Last month, I finally proposed to Hazel. I did it the right way this time, no grand gestures, no elaborate productions. Just the two of us on a quiet beach at sunset, with the waves crashing in the background and the wind in our hair. When she said yes, I felt a peace I had never experienced before. We're planning a small, intimate wedding. Just close family and friends. No media circus, no elaborate displays of wealth. Just two people who love each other, making a commitment to build a life together. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Stella and Finn. I wonder if they ever think about me, if they regret their choices. But mostly, I don't think about them at all. They're part of my past, a chapter that's closed. I've moved on. Hazel asked me once if I would change anything about what happened if I could go back in time. I thought about it for a long time before answering. No, I finally said. Because if I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have become the person I am today. I wouldn't have learned the lessons I needed to learn. And I might never have found you. She kissed me then, soft and sweet, and I knew I had made the right choice. Not just in how I handled the betrayal, not just in destroying those who tried to destroy me, but in choosing to move forward, to open my heart again, to believe in love despite everything. The game that started on that wedding day, the game of revenge and retribution, is over. I won. But more importantly, I survived. And now, I'm finally ready to live. I received a letter today. It was forwarded through several addresses before finally reaching me at the Mercer Corporation headquarters. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky, barely legible. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me pause. Inside was a single page, covered in that same trembling script. It was from Stella. Dear Noah. I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to respond. But I needed to write it anyway, if only for my own peace of mind. I'm writing to you from a small apartment in a city you've never heard of. I've been sober for 6 months now. Yes, I developed a drinking problem after everything fell apart. I've been in therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did, why I destroyed the best thing that ever happened to me. My therapist says I was afraid. Afraid of real love, afraid of commitment, afraid of being vulnerable. So I sabotaged it before you could hurt me first. It's a pathetic excuse, I know. It doesn't change anything. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry for the pain I caused you and your family. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. I hear you're getting married. I saw the announcement in the society pages. She looks lovely. She looks right for you, in a way I never was. I hope you're happy, Noah. I hope she gives you everything I couldn't. This is goodbye. For real this time. I won't contact you again. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that despite everything, despite all my lies and manipulations, there was a part of me, a small, broken part, that really did love you. Or at least, loved the idea of you. Be happy, Noah Mercer. You deserve it. Stella. I read the letter twice, then carefully folded it and put it in my desk drawer. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no forgiveness. Just a distant, detached acknowledgement that she had written it. Maybe someday I would feel something when I thought about her. Maybe someday I would even forgive her. But not today. Today, I had a meeting with the wedding planner. Hazel and I were finalizing the details for our ceremony next month. I picked up my phone and texted Hazel, heading home early. Want to grab dinner and talk about the seating arrangements? Her reply came almost immediately, only if you promise not to cook. My stomach still hasn't recovered from last time, I smiled and pocketed my phone. This was my life now. This was my future. And it was exactly what I wanted. The past was the past. The game was over. And I had finally, truly won.